Monday, January 23rd. It's approximately 1:05 p.m. We are here on a hearing to determine whether Ms. Paula Ferrario should be removed from the Holyoke Historic Commission. The format today is going to be that we're going to have every witness have a chance to speak. There are 3 witnesses in person here from the city of Holyoke. And my understanding is there's going to be a statement read by Ms. Ferrario's attorney, Brody Hale, who's also present. I'm going to ask that no one interrupt the witnesses while they're speaking, and when they're done speaking, if there's any questions, you'll have a chance to ask the witnesses questions. Mayor Garcia is going to be the hearings officer. He's also the appointing authority. He's going to hear from all of the witnesses, and he will not be making a decision today, but he will issue a decision once he's had a chance to listen to all of the testimony and anything else that gets submitted today as evidence, and then he'll issue a decision by the end of this week. So anyone who's going to be a witness at this point, I would ask that you raise your right hand to be sworn in. To all those who are testifying, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
I do.
Okay, we're going to start with, we have 3 city employees here. The first one is Aaron Vega, and he's going to make a statement.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Aaron Vega. I'm the director of the Office of Planning and Economic Development, which we call OPED. And one of the many things that OPED does is provide admin or staff support to a number of boards, commissions, and advisory councils, including the Historic Commission. I'm not sure the exact date of when the Historic Commission was moved into the umbrella of OPED, but it was sometime during the previous administration. I think the 2 things that we've experienced is the amount of work that many of these boards and commissions need, and it takes up a lot of staff time. And we're always trying to, again, get into a place where we're on the same page with expectations. Many of the boards and commissions take on a lot of the projects, whether it's letters of support writing, grant writing, all those kind of things that we help them with. Obviously, we do a lot of the back-end support of setting up the Zoom meetings, the agendas that get publicized, tracking any of the decisions and the votes that commissions make, which is the most principal part needed in the minutes after the meeting. And with the matter before us today, I can say that I started as the director in January of 21. Actually, this Wednesday will be the 2-year mark. So 2 years in OPED. And for the first just over a year, I believe there was a change, I believe in February of 2022, but we can always check the records. When the chair changed for the Historic Commission, it was kind of immediate that there was a different tone and a tenor. But again, as we try to offer staff support to all of our boards, we just sort of tried to work with the new team that was in charge of the Historic Commission. It wasn't soon after that the former chair and another member did resign from the commission, but again, there's always turnover and changes on these volunteer boards. And so we just continually try to adapt to the new leadership, and there seem to be some tensions moving forward. And we worked with the mayor's office, we worked with our team here to try to always continue to find resolution. And often I think we did find resolution. I have a really great staff in my office, and they found resolutions, but it always seemed to kind of go back, and the new issues would come up. So again, we just try to keep the expectations, I think, for our boards and commissions on the same page, as I mentioned. I think that was one of the things that perhaps started some of the tensions with the Historic Commission, was there was maybe a different set of expectations from the new chair as to what the staff could provide to them. So unfortunately, from my perspective as the director with my employees, it's been a struggle. First and foremost, to kind of protect my employees. Obviously, I want to make sure that they're working in a healthy environment. And so I think there's been some tensions there, trying to keep my staff, at the forefront, being able to do the work that they need to do, while there's been some personal issues there, or personnel issues, I should say. So I've supported my staff in moving forward on both their work with the commission, but also in their conversations with the law department, with personnel, to sort of address those issues. So it's been a tough road for the last year for some of my staff, and in fact, one staff member kind of didn't want to work with them at all after some things were said. So, but again, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of all the different issues. Of course, we can if it goes down that road, but I think it was just a lot of the expectations from their perspective were not being met from my staff, and then again, our perspective of what we actually do provide to, again, almost 10 or 11 different boards or commissions in our office.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Attorney Hale, do you have any questions for Mr. Vega?
Not at this time. I would ask my client whether she has any questions for Mr. Vega at this time.
Not at this time.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Next, I'm going to ask Jennifer Keat to make a statement as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Keat. I'm the Development Specialist in the City of Holyoke's Office of Planning and Economic Development. I am staff support for the Holyoke Historical Commission. I began working with the city in February of 2022. In the past year, I have staffed many boards and commissions, including HEDIC, HRA, Local Historic, and our Tourism Advisory Committee. I'm happy to say I have had a wonderful experience with these entities and have enjoyed a productive working relationship in which I felt joy in all my work. I have also staffed for nearly 1 year now the Holyoke Historical Commission. Within the first 2 months of my start date here at the Office of Planning and Economic Development, I observed what I thought to be growing pains between the Historic Commission and the staff. The Commission's chair expressed repeatedly the problems they had with staff and city procedures. I made every effort to report these concerns to my superiors in an effort to ensure prompt mediation and a healthy working relationship. Issues continued to arise, and many of these issues predate myself, continue to be unsolved, or still carry a lingering resentment. Over the next year, I continued to seek guidance on how to best repair any animosity or conflicts through meetings between staff and commissioners, and I attempted to create a workflow that would work most effectively for both parties. At my dismay, I noticed very little repairs on the working relationship and still found myself seeking guidance from my department director, the mayor, the law department, and personnel. It's my understanding that these parties were aware and working on the issues. Despite the efforts of all these entities, there was still continued animosity. I made every effort to complete my duties to the best of my ability and advise the Historical Commission. The situation only continued to escalate and evolved into a pattern of constant scrutiny on myself and my colleagues by the chair. We continued to attempt to make concessions and mediate to mend the working relationship. Ultimately, the mayor informed myself and my department that the chair was being removed. I trust that the mayor made every effort and placed careful thought into this difficult decision. The mayor was made aware of these concerns many months ago and has spent plenty of time, attempting to resolve these issues until ultimately I believe he was out of options.
Attorney Hale, do you have any questions for Ms. Keat?
Ms. Keat, would you think it fair to state, or am I understanding you? I'd like to back up for a moment before I proceed. Would it be fair to state that you're stating today that you felt there was animosity on the part of Chairwoman Ferrario against work that you were undertaking as part of your responsibilities as an OPED staffer for the Holyoke Historical Commission? Is that what you're testifying to today?
Yes.
Would it be fair to say, in your opinion, in your communications with the chairwoman of the Historical Commission of the City of Holyoke, that there was also hostility expressed on your part toward her at many points during the course of the past 11 months?
I wouldn't necessarily categorize it as that, so no.
You would not?
No,
Fair
I would
enough.
not. I would not.
Would it be fair to say that I'm specifically thinking of the incident regarding the Google poll that came out last October, that you specifically, would it be fair to say when that poll did not go as planned in a response to the chair that you expressed hostility in terms of being called out for the way the poll had been, by Ms. Ferrario in terms of the way the poll had been conducted? Would you say that your response might have be considered at that point to be a bit hostile or aggressive?
If memory serves me, that response started with a thank you for pointing that out and an apology on my part because I had never conducted a doodle poll before, after she had sent me an email pointing out that it had inadvertently been closed.
Would it be fair to say that the Historical Commission at times was not pleased with the performance of the minutes that you had taken for them?
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that Chairwoman Ferrario on multiple occasions discussed this with you via email?
No. She did not discuss on multiple occasions how I write my minutes. They would actually discuss them in the meetings. And Chair Ferrario never offered any guidance into how she would like the minutes done.
I have no further questions at this time. I would ask my client whether she has any questions at this time.
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Next is Alicia Zoller.
Good afternoon. My name is Alicia Zoller, and I'm the administrator for the Office for Community Development. I've been in the office since December of 2010. I've been with the city since December of 1997 in various roles, and my responsibility is to ensure that the federal grant funds are administered in accordance with the sending entity. In this particular case that I'm going to describe, the sending entity is HUD, and it involves the review and conduct of a Part 58 environmental review that we do for all federal grants. I recently sent a letter to Mayor Garcia asking for assistance with management of the expectations of the Holyoke Historic Commission on January 12th. The personnel issues related to the Historic Commission in Aaron's office were unbeknownst to me when I was sending this letter on January 12th. Dear Mayor Garcia, I'm writing to express my concern with my recent interactions with the Holyoke Historic Commission as represented by Ms. Paola Ferrero. My interactions with Ms. Ferrero have centered around the Anniversary Hill Park environmental review process. While the HUD Part 58 environmental review process is a public process, and this office welcomes public involvement, particularly by subject matter experts, the request by the HHC for documents, site visits, extensions of comment periods, and staff attendance at meetings has exceeded those normally encountered in the course of commission business. And in the course of commission business are my dealings with them as related to Part 58. I have received 23 emails from Ms. Ferrario regarding this project from October 3rd, 2022 to today, and yet there are no proposed impacts to historic resources. After receiving the MHC project notification form with a request for comments and the CDBG grant application via email in early October, Ms. Ferrario continued to insist that the Holyoke Historic Commission was not kept informed of the Anniversary Hill project, that the Holyoke Historic Commission was entitled to additional review time, that she would seek to involve Mass Historic Commission, and that she wanted to conduct a site visit. Fortunately, after conversations with Mass Historic, the Holyoke Historic Commission seemed to better understand their limited role in the Part 58 process. In the most recent request for additional information, see attached email January 12th, and there's a typo on my part, 2023, the HCC is weighing in on matters related to Part 58 wetlands impacts. In an email to me dated January 12th, 2023, in response to a HUD Part 58 wetlands process final notice, Ms. Ferrario notes that the, quote, commissioners are going on a site visit on Saturday to make sure we have a thorough report, end quote. To my knowledge, the historical commissioners have no jurisdiction or specialized knowledge regarding wetlands or floodplains. Further, Ms. Ferrario, signing as chairperson of the Historic Commission, is requesting copies of the environmental files that document compliance with steps 3 through 6 of Executive Order 11990. Executive Order 11990 is intended to, quote, to avoid to the extent possible the long and short adverse impacts associated with the destruction or modifications of wetlands, and to avoid direct or indirect support of new construction in wetlands wherever there is a practicable alternative. Citation from the HUD website. Steps 3 through 6 are actions taken by the city consultants to review and analyze alternatives. Part 58 is an administrative desk review and not a permit process. Again, this office welcomes public involvement. However, these repeated requests are demands on the time and capacity of the office and its consultants. I am concerned that the Holyoke Historic Commission may unnecessarily delay the Part 58 process, which jeopardizes the CDBG grant. I respectfully request assistance from you in managing the expectations and requests from the Holyoke Historic Commission. As always, I and the OCD team strive to support municipal boards and commissions in their duties. Thank you.
Mr. Hale, do you have any questions for Ms. Zoller?
I do, but I wish to ask my client firstly whether she would step in and, at the very least, explain the more fully, since we're getting into the letter of January 12th that's been brought up. I think I would ask that she address that before I address a couple of other points.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually, I would like to start and yes, from communication, as people know, I do take my job really seriously. And yeah, probably there are 23 male, and since Ms. Zoller mentioned them, I would beg they will be all entered as material evidence in this. Also, I am sorry that that my being careful and trying to do my job has caused more work for Ms. Zoller. I don't mean to be, I know that she's like many employees of the city of Holyoke, very overworked and probably understaffed. But the project that we are talking about, it's Anniversary Park, Scotts Tower, and it's extremely complicated. What these federal grants that we're looking at are dealing with Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. And at the point in this act, certified local government and Holyoke and local historic commission have elevated status. What that meant was that they had to be on the table with everybody really talking about the grant. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. It was very good for me to call and talk to Mass Historic, and that's all I was saying to Ms. Zoller. Let me check everything. Let me check that we have done procedure very well, because this is a lot of money that's coming in for Anniversary Park. It's a great project, and I want to make sure that due diligence, that all the work had been done correctly. So after talking with Elizabeth Sherva at Mass Historic, she said, oh yeah, no, the act, the National Historic Preservation Act was amended. So local historic commission do not have elevated status anymore. Still, we need to write comments. What makes it particularly hard is the Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. Has everything in it, from native land to wetland to sites that could be on the National Registry. So Scotts Tower itself is a site that could be on the National Registry, and there are wetlands. So and this is a very vast grant that covers a lot of parts. So when Ms. Zoller writes me, it would be so helpful to know exactly what part of the hub and the grant she's talking about. Also, to make it more complicated, as if it wasn't enough for us, the wetlands, a lot of the wetlands are where bridges and handstone wall that were original to the Garden of Scott Towers are. So, partially I get this very dry, very technical email. And among the email I will submit, I have a couple of emails saying, look, Alicia, I know you're very respected in the city. Can we have lunch? Can we talk about this? Can we have a phone call? I never got a response to the can we have a phone call email, which, instead of throwing kind of somewhat obscure technical email to me, if she had just called and said, we're talking about the new access road where we're burying the cable. We're talking about the wetland right now by the bridges, it would have made life for me so much easier. But again, I want to go back to the book of instruction for municipal boards and commission. I have a fiduciary relationship to the historical patrimony of the city. The booklet is encouraging me. It says, exercise care when making decisions and voting by informing yourself, asking questions, and expecting answer. All I was doing was my job. All I was doing in the back, my number one purpose was that I want these grants. These are such important grants, and Anniversary Park is such an important project. I was just doing my job. I'm sorry if it was taken as just wasting Ms. Zoller time. And just a quick comment, it's not relevant, but I just want to say that Yoni Glover, the head of conservation, has been stellar in this process. And he has taken me on a tour of the site, explained everything. It's been so wonderful, and I just want to give him credit. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hale, do you have any other questions from Ms. Zoller?
I think the only remaining question that I have for Ms. Zoller following my client's remarks is this. You state that 23 emails on this particular issue you found to be excessive. I'd be very curious to know, what do you think would be a reasonable number, and how would you assign that reasonable number, given the fact that every issue in and of itself is different, if 23 emails on a particular issue is excessive?
I think for the environmental review process, the number of emails really is dependent on the level of involvement of the board or the commission. In this case, there was a finding that there were no impacts to historic resources. And so that's what I'm basing the 23 emails. In my recollection, I don't recall ever having 23 emails about a project with any other board or commission under a Part 58 environmental review. And it really comes with, I'd like to respond to the comments around the dry language. We are legally obligated to provide legal notices in the language that's provided by HUD. But 23 emails in this case where there are no impacts to historic resources felt to me excessive in light of all of the other projects that we have going on. We've also never encountered a situation where we've had repeated requests for site visits.
I would ask my client if she has any more questions or comments.
Not at this moment.
Nor do I.
Okay, Mr. Hale, I'm not seeing any other witnesses for Ms. Ferraro present here on the, okay. Did you want to read a statement on behalf of your client?
What I'm going to do is make a statement. I'm not going to read one. I'm going to make one. And at that point, I'm going to then ask my client if she has anything to add. And then we can go from there. Mr. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I've spent the last several days reviewing copious amounts of documentation. related to this matter, not only to Ms. Ferrario's tenure as chairman of the Historical Commission of Holyoke, but also with regard to the process that has led us literally to sit and stand here today in this hearing. And I want to address that before I address anything else. On the 10th of January of this year, you informed Ms. Ferrario by letter that you intended to remove her as chairman of the Holyoke Historical Commission and as a member of that commission. I would state firstly that the way in which you sought to do this, through the letter that you issued, I am contending, as is my client, was not the proper means by which that could be done. Yes, we are here today, and I will get to that in a moment. But in that letter, you cited sections 34 and 26 of the city charter of the city of Holyoke as the means by which you were granted authority to remove Ms. Ferrario as chairman of the commission. As I stated to you in the letter that I transmitted to you last week, I reviewed both of those sections of the city charter, and I'm not finding language in there, given the statutory specificity of the language contained in those sections. I'm not finding language which in any way touched upon the Historical Commission or your ability to remove its members or its chair. So I find that to be interesting, firstly, as do I find interesting the fact that my client was served this letter by members of the Holyoke Police Department at her home as a means of delivery. Now, as an attorney, and as Attorney Ball is likely quite aware, it's certainly the case that county sheriff's departments are capable of transmitting letters as a means of service. Process servers are a common function of the sheriff's departments in the counties of this Commonwealth. I've not ever seen a situation in which the municipal police department has been used as a process serving entity. So I find that to be quite interesting as well. We're obviously here today because it was acknowledged in the communications that I've had with the city solicitor's office that you have decided to cite the language of Chapter 40, Section 8D, as the means by which this hearing is going to be conducted and which you are now seeking to use to remove Ms. Ferrario from office. And I would simply state that I find it, I have questions remaining as to whether the section that would apply would be Chapter 43, Section 61, given that the City Council confirmed Ms. Ferrario, whether they should be likewise involved in this process. But, again, we'll see what happens here and then go from there on our end. The question now turns to cause. You had stated in your letter, and I'm going to paraphrase it, that basically Ms. Ferrario's leadership no longer conformed with your vision for the city of Holyoke. If you wish to specifically, quote that sentence and take issue with what I'm about to say, I will totally get into that if necessary. But what I'm hearing today is not a vision question, but a question of the fact that staff members in the Office of Planning and Economic Development are dissatisfied with the fact that Ms. Ferrario exercised due diligence in carrying out her responsibilities as chairman of an independent organ of city government, which is not directly responsible to the Office of Planning and Economic Development. Ms. Ferrario was appointed and confirmed to this position. She is not a regular employee of the city. And the reason, if we look at the fixed terms and the language of the statute that established the Historical Commission, just as would be the case with the Planning Board or other city entities, that these individuals, unlike other city commissioners and employees, were given fixed terms, was to make their removal an extraordinary rather than an ordinary action. Ms. Ferrario does not serve at the pleasure of a mayor, but serves at the pleasure of the citizens whom she represents following her appointment by a mayor and confirmation by the city council, unless some sort of cause, a substantial cause one would assume, arises to prevent her from validly discharging her duties. What my client feels is happening to her today is that she is being removed from office, or that an attempt is being made to do this, not because there's a cause preventing her from discharging her duties, but because she did diligently discharge her duties. Mr. Vega is the head of the Office of Planning and Economic Development. That's absolutely a fact. He is not the boss, statutorily speaking, of Ms. Ferrario or the Historic Commission of the City of Holyoke. I would also add, Mr. Mayor, in your letter of removal, you stated that you, I'm going to get this correct here. Give me 1 second. Removing my client from the local historical commission. In Holyoke, we have two commissions. We have the local historic district commission and the Holyoke Historical Commission. Obviously, we know what you meant, but I would again point out the imprecision in that language as something to take note of. Mr. Vega, as director of the Office of Planning and Economic Development, was overseeing staffers who were the staff of the Historical Commission, along with, as he pointed out, various other bodies and commissions within the city of Holyoke. My client would contend that during the course of her interactions with Mr. Vega and over the course of her time as chairman of the Historical Commission, that it was often the case that Planning and Economic Development, that office, sort of saw the Historical Commission as, again, something that was underneath it rather than something that it was responsible for assisting. My client has made, again, known to me various instances in which it seemed to her, and if she wishes to expand upon these, she can, that the Office of Planning and Economic Development, so the Historical Commission, wished to see, I should say, the Historical Commission more as a tool to help it eliminate blight and facilitate the demolition of structures, rather than as an entity which was carrying out its actual purpose, which, as she sees it, is to assess properly the historical significance or lack thereof of every structure which would so qualify for receipt of such an assessment within the city of Holyoke, regardless of whether, during the course of the discharge of her duties, that would lead to the structure being demolished or preserved, and regardless of what impact that might have on economic development within the city. The Historical Commission was not created with an economic development goal or purpose in mind. It was created specifically by statutory authority of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to ensure the retention of the historical patrimony of each of the cities and towns in which a historical commission exists, such as Holyoke. My reference was made to the difference that had occurred when my client assumed the duties of chair last February, and the sort of less collegial relationship my paraphrasing, that existed between the commission and Mr. Vega. My client would contend that her predecessor and many predecessors in office, perhaps, were not serving as much as she would deem it necessary to do, and as the statutes would seem to deem it necessary to do, as a guarantor of the city's, the integrity of the city's roster of historic buildings. That on too many occasions, there were actions that were taken to perhaps demolish a city building or move one closer in that regard, with the goal of economic development in mind, that might not have occurred had the historical commission acted more independently. The final thing that I would say, aside from making the point that it is my client's feeling that a lot of the tensions and difficulties which presently could be said to exist result from the fact that there's sort of an inherent conflict of interest, one might say, between the purpose of the Office of Planning and Economic Development and the Historical Commission. That being that the Historical Commission is tasked with, questions of the history of buildings, whereas Planning and Economic Development is tasked with, bolstering as much of, economic development as can be had within the city of Holyoke. That this sort of inherent tension and the cross purposes which both bodies have make it less than well suited for the Historical Commission to be placed under the Office of Planning and Economic Development. The only other point that I would make would relate specifically to staff and the performance of staff and the tensions that have been stated by those who've testified today to exist with my client. Ms. Ferrario has stated to me on multiple occasions she was forced to step in and correct various problems which, if had gone unchecked, could have been very, very problematic for the city of Holyoke that were undertaken by staff members. One specific example of this regarded the issuance of demolition permits, or the request for demolition permits on two structures, 110 Appleton Avenue and 195 Appleton Avenue, which my client states were issued without a question being satisfactorily answered as to who actually owned the structures. My client states that she consulted Ms. Keat as to who the owners of, whether the demolition permit had been given to the owners of record of these structures, and that she had been informed by Ms. Keat that they had, and that when she checked the registry of deeds, she found that it was not the case that the name on the demolition permit matched the name of the owners of the property of record, and that this resulted in her having to liaise with Attorney Duggan in order that more paperwork could be filled out to avoid potentially catastrophic consequences if for the city, if lawsuits had been filed, etc., in the event that there had been a serious problem based on the fact that those owners of record were not the names on the demolition permits. Thankfully, nothing happened, but it could have. And that's the overarching point which my client would like to make today, that the cause, seemingly, for which she is being removed is the diligent nature of her work as chairman of the Historical Commission of the City of Holyoke. Is it more diligent, perhaps, than folks might be used to? Perhaps, I can't say. But regardless, there's nothing here in the record that I have seen today or in preparing for this hearing that would indicate that my client has been anything other than a diligent chair of a commission which is not supposed to be tightly controlled by the executive branch and which has a specific set of duties that it's responsible for undertaking. I would close by saying that given the nature of the Historical Commission, as an independent body created by statute of the Commonwealth, if we have a situation today where my client is removed for the cause of, being a diligent chair, basically, in a way that forced staffers to do work that they were not usually used to doing, perhaps undertaking tasks that they weren't used to undertaking, etc. I would question whether that might have a chilling effect on any future chair of the Historical Commission or any future chair of any other commission, perhaps the Planning Board, which is similarly, from what I can tell, statutorily established, from undertaking work that they felt was in the best interest of their commission, if it should be the case that they have a dispute with staff, which then leads to the mayor stepping in and removing them. How is it the case that a commissioner or chair of such a body, which is supposed to have a degree of independence, will be able to continue to exercise that independence if they have to worry constantly over their shoulder about whether they've done something which is going to get them summarily canned, seemingly for a very, less than significant cause, perhaps. Again, staff, dissatisfaction with their, correct assumption of diligence in the exercise of their duties. And that's about all I would have to say, and I would defer to my client to see, as chairwoman of the Historical Commission, whether she has anything else to add.
Yes, thank you, Attorney Hale. So one thing that I would like to specify here, Attorney Hale, and we don't have human witnesses here, is basing his statements on, I have furnishing him with about, I think, 200 emails that I have between me and the staff of OPED and representative of OPED. From the very beginning, I insisted that all communication would be written. So as we get the recording, we will back up all the statement that Mr. Hale has made with with paper evidence. So, and I'm holding here the email from Jennifer Keith of April 7. We were right in the middle of the demolition delay hearing for 197 Appleton. And Ms. Keith stated, it's my understanding that Devon Self-Storage is the current owner of the property. We have no additional document from the applicant. As I went, one of the things, I'm also a licensed real estate agent. When I checked the registry of deed, in fact, Devon Storage did not own the property. And in the sale of the property with Devon Storage was contingent to them being able to demolish part of the Merrick Mill 3 complex. I immediately informed Attorney Dagnant, and there was a series of paperwork that had to be filed, because if the city say the demolition delay didn't go through, Devon would have started demolishing right away, and they had demolished building that belonged to somebody else. The city would have been liable for a great lawsuit. So, so this is an email and it's on file. Also, what is referring about, it's been very uncomfortable to deal with Mr. Vega, because I'm sure it's somewhat unintentional, but, and I have a feed of email from March 7, which are to March 8, which are all concerning the demolition of the demolition delay of 195 Appleton. And in one of his emails, it's probably easier to read it out loud. It says, "Hello, Paula, would Monday the 21st at 10 work for you? We could do a staffing the AC meeting with Jennifer and Marie and spend a little time talking about 195. I saw Jeff sent a win plan to you. That's not concerned, but, and then he writes, I hope we can move forward with 195, though not the greatest development, it is an opportunity to secure the area, deal with the public health issue there, and get building into new ownership. You know, to which I responded, but one of the, it's a long email, but one of the core things that I wrote was, for meeting regarding 195, that is delicate. Sorry, I misunderstood Jeff in his email and thought that you wanted to meet regarding the Far Alpaca Mill. Depending on whether we are, depending on where we are with the hearing for 195, it may be perceived as improper for you and I to meet regarding the building. On the other hand, the commission may want me to meet with you to discuss more. The commission may want to meet with you to discuss more. So I made an invitation for him to talk about his project in front of the commission. But in his original email on March 7, I felt that in order for me to have a meeting to talk about stuff in the commission, I also had to talk about the demolition delay hearing that was in progress for 195 Appleton Street. Thank you.
Attorney Hale, do you have any other testimony or evidence that you want to submit?
Thank you, Attorney Ball. I'm going to submit a video to the mayor and yourself that my client compiled with two clips of historical commission meetings that she wanted to be reviewed and a couple of explanatory slides. It's no more than 3 or 4 minutes in length. I'm also going to submit the testimony of Luis Salazar, who is a member of the Historical Commission, who was not able to be here today, but who requested that his testimony be forwarded to the mayor. Those are the two that I have. I would ask my client whether you have any additional evidence. I mean, I'm almost tempted, since we've brought up the 200 and some emails that I've reviewed over the last 4 or 5 days, I'm almost tempted to have her submit all of them.
Yes.
Why don't we, could you print, Ms. Ferrario, all of the emails that we're referencing, all of the emails that I've reviewed, and perhaps drop them at City Hall within the next day or so?
Might be best for me to make a PDF and send it, but I can also have the hard copy. Yes.
Whatever the hearing officer would prefer, but a PDF would certainly seem quite sensible to me.
Yes, the only thing, I must be leaving for New York tomorrow, but I can have it all done by Friday.
I know.
Unless, if I have to do it sooner, I will.
Fair enough. The 2 emails that I'm going to be sending will be sent very shortly after the conclusion of this hearing. And again, they constitute the testimony of Historical Commissioner Salazar and a video that was, brought up, two video clips from previous commission meetings. Those video clips touch upon 2 points. One of the 2 points is the fact that another area of dispute that my client brought up to me that often occurred between her and staff was the retention of records. The video in question, the clip in question, comes from the January 2022 Historical Commission meeting, which my client partially filmed at one point, and tried to film in its entirety, but was not able to. And by the time that she got back to it, from what my client has told me, and I would ask Ms. Ferrer to confirm this, she was informed by Ms. Keat that they could not find the film for January of 2022, that particular meeting. Ms. Ferrario, is that correct?
That is correct. I'm looking through the email to find it right now, but yes.
So I have a clip of that meeting, which Ms. Ferrario was able to capture prior to it, the entire meeting seemingly disappearing. And that clip also touches upon the effort that was undertaken during the term of Mayor Murphy, which involved Mr. Vega to combine the Historical Commission, the Holyoke Historical Commission, and the local Historic District Commission, which in and of itself was not warmly received by all commissioners. And that is, again, those video clips are video clips my client would like to be submitted. So I will be sending those along shortly after the conclusion of this hearing, along with the testimony of Historical Commissioner Salazar.
Okay, I'm just,
For the record, the email that Attorney Hale is referencing is of July 11, 2022, from Ms. Key, I, Paula. We don't have the January 2022 HHC recording. Recordings are only available for a very limited time in our online account, and it appears that it wasn't downloaded and saved to the drive folder. I wasn't working here at the time. I don't know why this wasn't done. My apologies. And at that time, let's reflect, and you can look at the minutes of the Historical Commission. Mr. Vega did not have staff, so he was functioning as the staff person of the Historical Commission.
okay, thank you. Attorney Hale, I'm just going to state for the record here that we're talking about hundreds, perhaps thousands of emails that you're planning to submit into evidence.
I think a couple of hundred.
Okay.
Ms. Ferrario, would you say about 200 to 250, or how many would you?
That might be too much, but what I calculated is I had probably at least 5 emails a week with OPED for 52 weeks. And I don't think they may all be relevant, but we may just submit them all and mark the one that have been talked about during this hearing.
Right, because I've reviewed them all at the request of my client over the last couple of days. I learned way more about various parts of city administration in Holyoke than I ever thought I would come to know from these emails and other research. So Attorney Ball, I would definitely say it's certainly not thousands. I would certainly say it's in the low hundreds at most.
Okay, I mean, just with that said, that there's going to be some additional emails that no one's had the chance to review today. I would imagine some of the city employees are going to have some of their own emails that they may want to submit to have the hearings officer consider. So
Absolutely.
we will certainly send any of those to you that he's going to consider. And I would also state he's going to consider the conduct and what occurred at the January 9th Historic Commission meeting, which he was present at, which led to the letters that you referenced earlier. He was present for that. He's also been present for at least 1, possibly 2 meetings with her, so he has his own personal knowledge that he'll draw upon to make any final decisions. I'm going to ask now if there's anyone here after hearing the testimony of Ms. Ferrara, if anyone has a rebuttal.
I would ask before you do that, just to make clear that the meetings, my client did meet with the mayor several times. Those were meetings to discuss various staff-related issues and other issues. My client was never informed, for the record, that those were in any way, and I'm not saying that you stated that they were. I'm simply stating for the record, my client was never informed, especially the December 2022 meeting, that was never stated to be a disciplinary meeting, and given that she's not a regular employee of the city of Holyoke, I would state that any present or future classification of that meeting as such would be, in my judgment, incorrect. Although, yes, I would stipulate to the fact that she has met with the mayor previously.
So that was not a disciplinary hearing, and having been present for that meeting, I can tell you, that was a meeting, let me finish, thank you. That was a meeting for the department heads with the mayor and with Ms. Ferrara, at least 4 to 5 of us, to try to come up with a solution to this problem. And I think we met for about an hour and a half trying to come up with a solution for everyone to move forward and for this to work for everyone. So you are correct that it's not disciplinary, but I'm merely stating this will be something that the hearings officer can take into consideration as he makes his decision.
Very good. I simply wanted to state that, yes, we are in agreement that that was not a disciplinary meeting. That was all I was going to say.
Does anyone have a rebuttal? Mr. Vega.
Thank you, Attorney Ball. Just a few comments, and see if I can do them in order. I guess I'll work backwards. Regarding the missing meeting, again, staff was not, the current staff that supports the Historic Commission was not there. And I think we lost one planning board meeting that meets twice a month over the last 4 years of doing virtual. That's not too bad. Losing one Historic Commission meeting minute that meets once a month over a 3.5 year period of doing virtual meetings. I mean, I think there's a technology aspect here that we're trying to work with. And if that meeting wasn't recorded, again, any member of staff and or commission could say, hey, did someone press record? So I think it's just a joint effort. And again, there's no ill intent on the missing meeting. I just want to make sure that's clear. Just a couple quick points. Obviously, these emails in question have also come from our side. So these are very well-known emails. So I just want to make sure that it's clear that OPED never stepped into the Historic Commission hearings. You read Ms. Ferro's email about my comments on 195. We never stepped into their discussions. We didn't comment publicly in their meetings. This was them with the owners. And again, you saw my email, like, not the greatest, but we could save some of those buildings and, secure that area, because obviously in Holyoke we have an issue when empty and dilapidated buildings are often become squatter situations. And so it's a public health issue, was all my comments on that project. We did our best and continue still to include the Historic Commission, particularly over the last year. We had them as part of our initiative on historic tourism. We went to them as experts in this and had them working with PVPC, our consultants on this. So we were always trying to include the Historic Commission on initiatives going on in OPED. There's always this discussion that there's some kind of conflict. Though our missions may not be the same, I think they are actually related and overlap. We too want to see the preservation of historic buildings and have them reused and reoccupied. That's definitely part of our economic development vision. I think that, again, has to be clearly stated and understood by all of our commissions and staff that we staff these commissions. We do not dictate these commissions' agendas. We do not put items on their agenda unless they ask us to put them on that they've agreed upon. We are not dictating any of their scope of work. We are lending staff support. Does not mean expert support, it means staff support, administrative staff support to these commissions. I just feel that as you read through these emails, you have to understand the overarching cause, if you will, and I'm not a lawyer and don't pretend to be one, is the tone and the direct calling out of individuals during public meetings. Public comments about current and former staff, current and former commissioners were called out in public meetings. We included often in those early meetings some of those comments in the meeting notes, and were asked by commissioners to take them out. Again, you can always go back and get the full transcript. We felt that this continual calling out of staff and often conversations that could happen before, after an email, before, after a meeting, and could even happen via email, was never taken upon by the commission. We had a number of meetings where we worked on what should the process be, what do you want, and numerous times we would try to adapt into this new process, and quite honestly, the follow through from commissioners fell short. And again, we can go point by point if we want to, but when you talk about some of these things that you've brought up, there's many sides to the story, and we don't want to need to go down each external. You want to bring up the external drive, you want to bring up mini minutes, you want to bring up the combining of the commission. Once again, I'm gladly tell you the truth and the backstory on that conversation and why we're no longer having it, because again, commissioners don't want to have it. We are not pushing that agenda. Lastly, again, not being the lawyer here, but I just am concerned that you're now presenting a written letter from a commissioner that we're not going to be able to hear or see. You're referencing chosen video clips, again, that we're not going to be here to see in this group right now. So that's a bit concerning that we can't understand or see what the other materials you're presenting. We've read statements into the record today. We're here to discuss this today. I know there's other commissioners that may have other things to say, but again, people who volunteer for these boards don't want to be involved in conflict. They don't want to start questioning their chair or removal of somebody. All of our volunteers, including Ms. Ferrara, work hard and work diligently. It becomes about working together where the issues come in.
Attorney Ball?
I just want to make one comment regarding Mr. Vega's statements. Regarding the letter that you're going to submit, if there is anything...
I actually would request that we just read it into the record, given his comments. That might
Fine,
alleviate
that's fine.
concerns. Ms. Ferrario, could you please read Mr. Salazar's comments into the record?
Okay, so can anybody read it? It's very long. As you know, I'm heavily dyslexic and I haven't read it over. So it might be, I would love somebody else to read it, but if nobody is there, I will read it.
I would, but I can't see well enough to do it,
All
unfortunately.
right, so you have to. Sure, yeah, hold on. So it's gonna be.
And I would just also, while that's being set up, Mr. Vega, I had spoken with Attorney Ball earlier this morning regarding whether we would be able to play those video clips. She wasn't sure that we could during the course of this meeting, whether the technology allowed for that. If it would be possible to play them and have you view them right now, we would be totally amenable to that as well.
Okay. And so, I have my wife reading it for me because she reads well.
Very well.
Hi, Paola. I hope you are doing well. I will not be able to participate in the hearing regarding the removal of Historical Commission member today at 1 p.m. Regardless, I want to write a few lines as a witness of your work and development as chair of the Historical Commission. Please don't hesitate to share this at the meeting. I've been a member of HHC since September 2020. Since the first few months of participating in our monthly meetings, you have always made me feel welcome and appreciated. We first try to improve the communication goals in a subcommittee and work on a selection of historic places for future historical map of our community with the support of interns. We successfully achieved some of our goals during that year. Back in 2021, when you became chair of HCC, I was pleased to work under your leadership. Unfortunately, we inherited unhealthy practices around our role as a commission from past administrations. You decided to go on the challenging path of clearing up all our essential bureaucratic procedures, CLG annual report, CPA workflow, and letters of support, to name a few examples, even when sometimes it required you to go above and beyond your responsibilities. And for that, I feel honored to work with you at HHC. On a personal note, I shared some values of my values with you. The pursuit of transparency in all aspects of our life, even if that makes us many times unpopular. The passion for what we think is worth our time, and most importantly, the genuine goal of serving in any capacity to our city with the best of our skills. I wish you the best for today's hearing, Luis Salazar.
So that's that. Attorney Ball, or anyone in council chambers, do we have the ability to play video clips on your end?
I truly don't know. I'd have to defer to our city council administrative assistant.
I would ask the same question then of that individual.
I can set you as a co-host, which would give you screen share capability if you would be ready to send it or to play it.
I can try that. I don't know if the audio will work, but I can try.
Let's give it a shot. Because, you know, again, to Mr. Vega, believe me, we're not trying to keep you in the dark on any of the information that we're sharing tonight. I'm not stating that you alleged that. I'm just stating we are trying to be as transparent as we can.
Appreciate that. Us too. Thank you.
They should be sharing a view, not with,
Yeah, hold on. I'm trying to find the video. Here we go. Okay, let me see if I can share screen. And it would be here. Share.
Oh, there we go.
How is that?
Quite good. Now, whether the audio will work is a question.
Let's see.
Paula, pull it back a bit because, okay, well, some of the slides were a bit hard to see.
Okay.
I know how to do that.
Like that?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Try it. You should have it like, okay. I know how to do it if you can.
Yeah, Marco, I'm happy to be up here to ordinance meeting, happy to lead the tribe with you to come these. I've already had preliminary conversations with Councilor John McGivern, Rebecca Lindsay, and Mayor Terrence Murphy. I'm not that they all seem to be in favor. To Rich's last point, I mean, basically, the authority and the power that this commission has cannot be transferred to the local, can be transferred to the local historic district commission. The authority and the power that the local historic district commission has could not be transferred to this commission. Hence why this one's being dissolved, quote unquote. So the local historic district commission can do everything this commission does, plus the establishment of the local, and manage the local historic district. And I think that, yeah, the idea would be that the mayor would appoint everyone from this commission to the local historic district commission. Few details to work out there, but then this council could do those, resolve and establish.
So the only thing that sounds different than what I've heard already was that the new commission is not called Holyoke Historical Commission, with within it having the local historic district ordinance. I thought that the new commission was going to be called, you know, HHC, not local historic district, but or historic district commission. But the name doesn't really matter. I just, the process wasn't, yeah, I'm remiss in reviewing the documents in detail. That's making me hesitant. But I see that, you know, it's important, we need to do it, and I don't know if we're ready to vote tonight or not, but I'm seeing that one of the commissions is my own. I don't want to just abandon it. At the same time, I don't understand the way forward entirely. So you've clarified it for me, and if I need to be at any other, like that ordinance meeting, I can certainly attend. I don't have tons of free time, but I certainly want to help guide us through this process.
I just want to sort of echo that we're missing two commissioners in this conversation tonight, unfortunately. And there are a couple of other factors hanging over us. I don't know when the next ordinance meeting is, but when is the next? I mean, we're also breathing down the neck of the election, which is going to change everything. And we're going to lose Rebecca, who's, head of the ordinance committee. So I know there's sort of two different things I'm getting at. And, I think we had talked about holding off on this until after the, results came in for the election. But if I do sort of feel like there might need to be a little more time to look at this document and feel like we have a sense of who's taking this new language and making it happen for real before we present it, because just sort of feels a little, without them in this particular role, I think it's important to make sure that whoever is going to be presenting this information feels confident in that regard. And that may very well end up being Paula, but she's not here right now.
Yeah, I was two quick comments.
Two things. It's in charter rules, not in ordinance.
Oh, okay. Oh, because it's in charter then. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Charter. Okay.
And
that's much better for us, given the knowledge of the commission, of the charter commission.
I would say, I don't want to get into this conversation too much right now at 7 o'clock on Monday, but I guess from my perspective, until the last meeting I had with you all, I didn't realize, nobody in this office realized there was such disagreement.
Right.
So I'm not going to call anybody out in particular, but when I've met with individuals about this, everything seemed to be a go. And until recently, until December, when I met with this committee and then heard from this local historic district that the issues were risen. So it went to City Council as a draft to be talked about, and I'm not sure why there wasn't or wasn't a vote, but I guess that there was definitely a different understanding from this office's understanding, again, at arm's distance, that there was such much.
It went to City Council without either commission voting.
Yeah, the mayor, I would just say, if I decided that I wanted to do this, or the mayor decided that he or she wanted to do this, they could do it. If the City Council decided they want to combine these commissions, they could do it. Just saying, that's not what happened. But I'm just saying, this is, the better way, of course, is to have the commissions initiated. But these are designated committees. So, the other issue with the local historic district, they have to find a home. They've got to change the ordinance because they have no home.
What do you mean by that?
I'm not required. They're not my commission. The only reason why we even help them out is because Chris is an intern in our office, is on the commission. So I've agreed to post their agendas, but I have no obligation to help that committee out. Nobody in the entire city does. So when that commission was created, they didn't place it anywhere. And I don't want the commission. I don't need another commission in my office. But I don't have. So that's the discussion. They need, because they should be holding public hearings, and they haven't been. And so they have no staff. They technically, in ordinance, they have no staff support.
In ordinance.
Right, they don't live anywhere. Like you live here. You're designated to be in this office for staff support.
So just to clarify for myself, so when you say we're in ordinance, so ordinance within the city determines which bodies, which commissions belong to which departments.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. Because we have an order going now before the city council to create the tourism committee. So we worked in the bylaws, the ordinance. It would be housed in this office. So yeah, it's in the ordinance that it would be staffed by FC Planning Economic Development. So that was never, when the local historic district was created, they didn't put it in.
So that was the video clip in question. Those were the video clips and slides in question that Ms. Ferrario wanted to show. I will transmit them in any case to the mayor and to Attorney Ball. Attorney Ball, should anyone else be CC'd on those when we send them over?
That should be sufficient.
Very good. I have nothing else. My client, Ms. Ferrario, do you have anything else?
Not at this moment.
Okay.
Do any of the witnesses that are here have anything else? Mr. Vega?
Just one last one, and thank you for sharing those videos. I appreciate it. And yeah, remember all those conversations. And I think it's just important to note, and I think it comes across in those videos. When I came into this office, that work about combining the commissions was already happening. To my understanding, as is indicated in those videos, driven by the chairs of the two commissions. So staff was doing the work of looking at the ordinances and all the rules and how to do that. We looked at other cities in the state that have combined local historic and historic commissions. We weren't trying to reinvent the wheel. Once, and how we got to city council, I mean, again, it was just the order to have the discussion about it, but I don't know how that happened. But this was already talked about before I came in. Once I met with the chairs and the new chairs and the committee members as an individual, as Aaron Vega, the director of OPED, I learned quickly that the staff wasn't in favor of it, and we backed off. I mean, they keep bringing this up. My staff abided by their wishes. I came in, and I'm not going to speak to whether the former chairs were sharing enough information with the board members. I don't know. I don't know what their process for sharing information was. That's what a number of our meetings were about, was the sharing of information. But once they voiced their concerns, we backed off. We have other things to do. This was not a priority for us. And obviously we never asked it be refiled in a new city council. Never talked to any city councils about it since then. So again, they keep bringing this up, but I think it shows how we're listening to the commissioners. One chair had an agenda item, that chair leaves, a new chair comes in, they have a different agenda, we work with that agenda. That person's agenda was not to have the conversation anymore about combining the commissions. We never spoke about it again until I had to keep rebuttaling these accusations that we were pushing it. And just for the record, we still staff the local historic district commission. We still give them the staff support that they need as well.
Anything further?
I have too many emails. I can't find it right now, but I do have an email stating, Mr. Vega saying, I am too busy now to keep pushing the merge of the commission, but we will submit to record.
Anything else?
Nothing further from me.
Okay. So this concludes, unless anyone else, I think the appointing authority hearings officer would like to say a word.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for your time and due diligence and doing this. I am, as Attorney Ball alluded to earlier on in the meeting, we're going to review all of this and we'll respond accordingly. As far as whatever the technical concerns that were brought up and actions taken, and we'll respond in writing to those as we draw up a conclusion. I do want to say, when I first came into office, we've been dealing with these issues, and I've heard a lot of everything that was talked about today, plus more, on both sides, because the commission, they're the appointing authorities of the mayor, and I have a connection and a duty to respond to them when concerns come up. And then we have our department heads who I have a duty to respond to and to respond when concerns come up as well. And since I've been here, I did hear both sides on all sorts of issues and concerns and perspectives. And I want folks to know, and it's certainly going to be my intention when I come up with a conclusion, that my response has nothing to do with the work that you guys are doing in your respective fields. I've heard a lot from Attorney Hill, and thank you so much, Attorney, for the the work you've put into reviewing documents and trying to come up with, some reasonable perspectives on the situation here. I am not at all concerned about and questioning Paola's inability to be a good member as far as historical values and concerns are of this city. My only real expectation, and I tell this to every person I appoint, no matter what I might think personally on any issue, is to practice good governance, to work together with your peers on your boards and commissions, and also if you have staff capacity, to collaborate and work together. Now, in that process, I did understand, finally, I said, look, if the issue is working with OPED to what was shared earlier on in the record here, the Historical Commission is not responsible to OPED. OPED's not responsible to the Historical Commission. And I've explained to folks, and I want folks to understand out in the audience and in the public, that if that is not the direction the commission wants to go with this arrangement, I believe the arrangement was made just to be creative in how staff support is offered, given our limited capacity and resources. But if that's the direction that the commission wants to go, to divorce its relationship with OPED, I have no issues with that. But I have to hear it from the commission. I've only heard it from one commission member. But nevertheless, that's my only real thought. If there's any conclusion to this, to remove or to keep, remember, I want folks in the audience to know and understand, completely neutral here because I'm responsible to all of you, including the appointing members to the commission. I'm specifically looking at how we're practicing governance, working together with your peers, and that we're making decisions and acting in accordance to, how we expect boards and commissions to practice. But I thank you all. I'm going to take some time myself. A lot of what I already know, plus a lot of what I've heard today. I've heard the perspectives. I've heard the points of views, and we'll draw up the conclusion.
It's up to you.
I'm fine with it. I'm completely okay. Go ahead, Susan, please, if you just want to. She was just asking for anybody that heard that we have a member of the public.
That's right.
She'll introduce herself, who's asked to offer some comments for the record.
What?
Oh, sorry. Paula, did you?
We agree on no comment from the public in this hearing, so we're not changing the rule now.
Paula, forgive me. Did we agree to that?
I was not aware that we never had that discussion.
Okay. Attorney Hill?
In writing, Attorney Ball, you had stated to me that because this was a public hearing and not a public meeting, members of the public would be allowed to watch but not comment. And you had asked me to provide you with witnesses. I mean, if you want me to go back to what you had sent me, I'd be happy to. But it was my understanding, based on the communication that you had given me, that you wanted those who would be speaking to be on one side's witness list or the other.
I do recall that we discussed that via Zoom, and I would agree that should apply as well in chambers. So we will not take any public comment. I'm sorry.
That's atrocious.
So with that said, I'll pass it back to Attorney Ball if you wanted to, anything else in this that we want to do before we close?
I think that will be it. So this concludes this hearing, and there will be a decision made in writing once the appointing authority hearings officer has the chance to review everything that's been submitted today and everything that will be submitted this week. And as mentioned, some additional information that he has in his own that he's experienced personally that he'll take into consideration as well. And there will be a decision sent in writing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.